one of 7 other locations, this is what's in your backyard. In earth and concrete bunkers, thousands upon thousands of rockets, artillery and mortar rounds, landmines, bombs, spray tanks. Mile upon mile of the unthinkable. Enough nerve agent and poison gas right here in this one depot to kill every living creature on Earth over and over again. This is the first time the Army has allowed anyone inside these bunkers to photograph its stockpile of live chemical weapons. Before anyone enters, monitors are checked for leaks. So far, there have been about 1,500 leakers. They are sealed in metal tubes for safe storage. The M55 rocket is the weapon the Army worries about most. It's the only one with nerve agent, propellant, and explosives packed together in a fragile aluminum casing. The M55s are deteriorating. If the Army doesn't get rid of them, they could become dangerously unstable. There are 500,000 of them stored in 8 places in the United States. General Harry Karaginas is the caretaker of all the chemical weapons at Army depots around the country. Would you dare move these?
Sir, it's my opinion that we ought not be moving these rockets because the potential for leakers is enhanced. That's not the right word, but it becomes very evident.
Back in the beginning, when the stuff was being designed, no one thought about how to get rid of it. Harvard scientist Matthew Messelson recalls a briefing given years ago by a man who designed one of the weapons.
We asked him, since you designed it, his name was Mr. Berlin, how did you imagine that we would get rid of it if we didn't use them? And he looked up at us and said, sir, we thought we'd use them. We never figured out how to destroy them.
So what to do with this curse? In 1982, the Army decided to burn it, to build 8 enormous high-tech incinerators, one at each depot. The total cost of the program is pushing $7 billion and rising. That's more than 20 times the cost of building the weapons in the first place. The Army first built a model incinerator on Johnston Atoll in the Pacific. For a year and a half, the plant has been storing and trying to burn American weapons that the Germans and the Japanese demanded be removed from their soil. That's the good news. The bad news is this model plant has been down half its life because of mechanical breakdowns. Its cost has almost doubled, and the test effort is almost 2 years behind schedule. General Walter Busby is the program manager for what's called the Chemical Weapons Demilitarization Program.
It is not performed up to expectation during the first campaign on Johnston Island. We've always put safety first. That's cost us money, but I mean, we have put safety and environmental compliance, and we will get there at a higher rate than we are now at Johnston Island. It's a matter of time and a first of a prototype facility.
One of the incinerators is planned for the Lexington Bluegrass Depot. That's less than a mile from the Clark Moores Middle School. And if the one on Johnston Island is having all those problems, the parents of these children want to know why the Army insists on putting a nerve gas incinerator in their town. The depot in Richmond houses only a small percentage of the nation's chemical weapons, but the opposition is stronger here than anywhere else. When the Army brass came to explain the safety of their system, more than 1,200 people showed up. What the people here are afraid of is an accident. There have been 22 incidents at Johnston Atoll. Nerve agent leaking into areas normally occupied by workers, and 1 leak from the smokestack into the atmosphere. No one was hurt. But in Kentucky, people worry that a release from a plant nearby could spew a deadly cloud of nerve gas over their entire town.
Hundreds of thousands of people are vehemently opposed to the thought of burning chemical weapons in this place that we call our home.
But why in the name of heaven are you spending money trying to say it's all right to put it here when you can jolly well take it out west where there's a place already there?
If the nerve gas was to leak right now, what would we do?
General Malloy, could you answer that question? If the nerve gas was to leak right now, what would we do?
I'm not able to answer that exactly, frankly.
Not answering that exactly wasn't good enough for Charles and Kathy Flood, who've taken the lead in opposing the incinerator the Army wants to build in Kentucky 2 years from now.
I don't think for a moment that they can accurately claim that they're going to be able to run this thing night and day, starting it up, slowing it down, stopping it, saying, gee, we're sorry about that, gee, it never did that before. Do all of that and tell us that some of it can't escape, and if it does escape, then they're very sorry, but we are dead.
General Busby says that by the time the Army builds an incinerator in Kentucky, the Johnston Island plant will have proved the technology works.
We will have data. We will never operate that facility at Lexington without the consent of those authorities who can give us permits to construct, operate, and show that we can meet the compliance characteristics.
When we asked them, since they said they'd had 4 or 5 years of experience, what was coming out of the smokestack, they were not able to tell us because they'd had almost no experience in incineration. So all along has been a history of what the Army sometimes called mishandling the truth.
Thus far, in 10 years of experience, and our operational experience at Johnston Island, which is very limited, only 7 months of operation, we've shown that the process exceeds, not just meets, exceeds all the environmental and safety requirements.
But an independent evaluation paid for by the Army said that while the overall plan seemed safe enough, the actual plant had some serious faults. And the Army's own records showed constant mechanical breakdowns in the furnaces and failures in the monitoring systems. The organized opposition in Kentucky says this points to a future disaster for them. The Army's response is that it has safely burned nerve agent, but the process is 99.9999% efficient.
To this day, they cannot really tell you what is coming out of that stack. We are the ones who are going to be dead if those statistics are wrong, and they choose moments that are the optimum moments for them. All of their statistics are slanted, and we are dealing with facts, real incidents, and real situations that have occurred.
One real situation occurred in Utah in 1968. 6,000 sheep died near the Dugway Proving Ground. The Army could not explain it.
At this time, it would be purely speculative to attempt to fix a specific cause of death of the sheep. Until the investigation is complete, the cause of death will not be known.
In fact, nerve gas was being tested a full 45 miles from where the sheep died. The Army did pay the ranchers hundreds of thousands of dollars, but never admitted responsibility. The civilians in Lexington would like to see all the chemical weapons at the depot moved out using C-141 aircraft to take them to a sparsely populated area, like the depot at Tooele, Utah. The Army thinks that's a bad idea.
What would happen if a C-141 full of nerve gas crashed in a populated area?
There would be a major catastrophe. If it were in a populated corridor, you would have a potential for a very significant disaster.
Once again, they have a little problem with facts, which is that last year, they took their German stockpile of chemical weapons and took it halfway around the world to Johnston Atoll in the Pacific for destruction. And they come back and tell you or me that they can't move it. That's absurd. They've just demonstrated very effectively that they've moved it. Their record on transportation is perfect.
The first incinerator in the continental United States is now under construction at Tooele, Utah. There's little opposition to it here. For years, the small community has depended on the depot for jobs. Still, the federal government is spending more than $300 million on programs to prepare the population for an accident or major leak. This is a test, an exercise.
An estimated 8 rounds out of 108 have exploded on the Igloo apron. There are some injuries, including a fatality, and that's all the information we have right now.
We repeat, this is not a real accident, but it is a real nightmare.
This is only a drill, You are required evacuation.
The Army takes this business very seriously. Once inside the Tooele Depot, every visitor must be prepared for an emergency.
Should any of these systems go into alarm while you're on tour, you will be required to don your protective mask.
No one can enter without a gas mask and a lecture on how to use it and the nerve gas antidote kit.
Make a fist around the green auto-injector using a smooth, straight motion. Place the green needle end against the outer thigh muscle.
Here at Twelly, I noticed that the, the precautions are rigorous. Everyone's required to wear a gas mask, required to know how to use it, required to carry an antidote kit with him. Are you going to issue those kits to those people living around the base at Lexington?
That decision will be reached by the local officials, the state of Kentucky, the local emergency planners, as to what levels of protection, evacuation procedures they feel are comfortable, they're comfortable with, and are necessary to provide maximum protection to their population during this period in the event we would have an upset condition during incineration.
If that sounds like General Busby is dodging the question, the local man on the scene, the Madison County emergency planner, retired General Merwin Jackson, is emphatic.
Are you going to supply the 40,000 people around here with that kind of emergency equipment?
No, sir, not at this point. That may come somewhere down the road, but right now we're talking about evacuation. If we can get the people out of the community safely, obviously we won't need to do that.
We checked the traffic at rush hour around the depot. These are the routes for a major evacuation of the area. It's hard to imagine what these roads would be like if there was panic. Kathy Flood says the current emergency plan defies common sense.
Our hospital personnel who would be charged with treating chemically contaminated people have no protective gear. The emergency personnel are supposed to go out and direct traffic. Likewise, they have no protective gear. I think that if there was a chemical accident out there, that you just have to button up at home and hope for the best.
There's some wonderful or dreadful irony to all of this, to all these weapons that cannot be used and cannot be moved and must be destroyed. It's a kind of devil's dilemma. Both sides in the Cold War built these things to try to scare the hell out of each other. And now all these years later and all these chemical weapons later, we've only succeeded in scaring the hell out of ourselves. The Army is now in the second phase of its test program and says so far the results are better than expected. But if the American program still has problems, imagine what the new Russian Commonwealth is facing. They don't have a clue what to do with their huge stockpile, so for advice, they've turned to the people those weapons were once aimed at, the United States.
There's the runway. This right here is the ship that came from the Solomon Islands with some more munitions to be disposed of. That's it, the golf course right there. There's the baseball course, or baseball field, right? Runway, there's the plant right there. the indoor theater and one of the old recreation rooms. There's the water plant, the powerhouse, antennas for the TV and different stuff. Some of the barracks. There's the bowling alley. Some of the redwoods. And then the dock where they put the barges when they come in. Here's the big airport. That's where all the planes will sit. And the big fire department.